I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for a live webinar hosted by Jibestream, the premier indoor mapping platform provider, indoo.rs, your professional indoor positioning system provider, and reelyActive, technology-agnostic real-time location system provider. Today we'll be hearing from Chris Wiegand, Jibestream's CEO and co-founder, Bernd Gruber, indoo.rs CEO and co-founder, Jeffrey Dungan, reelyActive CEO and co-founder, and special guest Serge Bendehan, Senior Business Strategy Advisor at Desjardins.
Great. Well, thank you, Jody, and thanks everyone for joining today. It's a great turnout, and we're excited about today's webinar. To get started, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the corporate workplace landscape today. It's no secret that the workplace is undergoing a massive transformation that I think has equal opportunity as it does challenges. So one of those challenges is, especially in a place like a financial institution, our managers are challenged by finding new ways to attract and retain talent. We all know that today's workforce, maybe unlike other generations, is not really motivated by working in antiquated buildings with mahogany walls and expensive oil painting. They really want to be in an environment that is as innovative as the products they're working in. And also, as maybe more importantly, they don't want to be slowed down by the silos and barriers of yesterday's workplace, and they're really expecting the same user experience as they have in their personal apps to remove friction. Well, on the management side, when they're planning space, they also want to optimize performance and encourage collaboration and connect employees that just really weren't possible before. Lastly, the venue owner today wants to create an integrated work environment so they can quickly respond to the fast-changing needs and demands of the workforce. Where we stand today with the requirements and things that have to be done will certainly be different in the next 12 months and the 12 months after that. So it's really important that we don't have to start over again. It's no longer a theory that workplaces have to, they're really moving to digital innovation strategies that they'll increase productivity, lower their costs, and will generally be better to adapt to change. There's plenty of studies like the one we're seeing on the screen now that are supporting what's going on in the workplace. But even better than that, today we're going to be going through this case study with Desjardins to see what they've done through this process and been very successful at deploying a solution that's having a meaningful impact on their employees. So I think you'll all agree that after hearing from Serge today, our special guest, they've approached us in a very thoughtful way and something maybe to be inspired by for your own workplace. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff for a moment to talk a little bit about some of the background in the smart workplace.
Great, thanks, Chris. So traditionally, the workplace was just that. It was a place to get work done. But today's smart workplace is as dynamic as its occupants, who are carrying smartphones, they're using apps, and they're regularly living live digital experiences. So with sensor technology more accessible than ever, there's an opportunity to create smart workplaces that sense their environment and their occupants via these devices that they carry. And as such, the smart workplace provides a steady stream of data that enables continuous improvement. You can observe, improve, and repeat. So by adopting open, flexible technology platforms with web standard APIs, it's actually possible to combine data sources to provide the right set of features which are free to evolve over time. You can think of it as smart today and smarter tomorrow. So on that note, I'll hand it off to Bernd, who will present how the platforms all fit together in the case of Desjardins.
Sure, and thanks, Jeff. Now let's take a closer look at how this whole system falls into place. Well, what Desjardins wanted in the first place was to really create ownership. So while outsourcing developmental technological components, Desjardins kept the role of the PO, the project owner. How did that work? Well, under the direction of Desjardins, and after quite a long and extensive evaluation process, the best solution providers were picked. And that includes 4 different companies with 4 really individual core strengths. First of all, I want to mention Jibestream. Jibestream provides a beautiful crafted digital indoor maps that build the foundation layer really for the blue dot and tracking solution. Their mapping platform connects all systems through their SDK as well as their CMS. Then there is reelyActive, which enables Desjardins to track relative hot desk occupancy and retrieve valuable real-time analytics data. So this is the real cool stuff. This empowers employees to find available workstations much faster, and like this helps to improve productivity and the comfort. Then there is us. We at indoo.rs, we provide the indoor positioning solution that so-called blue dot on the map in form of an SDK. And it allows users to locate themselves as well as others on a map in real time, and enables all type of indoor positioning use cases. And finally, there's Logient, who were really the ones who developed the application as well as acted the integrator to kind of put all those pieces of the puzzle together. So Logient's role allowed Desjardins to bridge the business and user requirements with what the different technology partners were able to bring to the project. It might sound now a little bit of complex from a technical point of view, but to be honest, it actually really isn't. So our system combined work really seamless together. It's almost like there's one solution. And with this, I'd like to hand over back to Chris.
So as you can see with the technology components together that Baron was just describing, once we have all this together, it's really the foundational layer to everything that we want to do in the future. So starting out with different use cases may just be blue dot wayfinding, room booking, location-based messaging that could be setting up geofences and different messages based on different rules, and then things like asset tracking into the future. And so I'm going to turn this back over to Jeff, and he's going to introduce our special guest in Desjardins.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So just before I do that, some of our attendees may not be familiar with Desjardins. I'll provide just a brief intro into the company and the office site. So Desjardins is Canada's largest cooperative group, and they actually have an iconic presence here in the province of Quebec. And they've been innovative since their founding in 1900. They're actually the first savings and credit cooperative that was established in North America. And notably in this context, they've won awards for being among the best employers in Canada. As for the office site, some of the attendees may recall the 1976 Olympics in Montreal. Montreal never one to outdo itself with interesting ideas, so we created a unique stadium for that with a supposedly retractable roof, which resulted in the creation of the world's tallest inclined tower, a record that stands to this date. And Desjardins find themselves in this world's tallest inclined tower. So I'll provide some quick highlights of the tower itself. It's Desjardins occupies 7 floors of the tower. It uses open seating. And there's conference and meeting rooms, as you would expect, and there's a rather large cafeteria. And if you ever have the chance to visit, you'll find it's a very modern and unique site based on its triangular shape. The background for Desjardins moving in was really about requiring space. The tower was chosen as the site. It actually became a flagship project for Desjardins and really kickstarted their digital transformation with this project, as I'm sure Serge will mention in a bit. So this year, Desjardins has already moved 1,200 employees from their former site. And in short, the tower is designed to accommodate more people, more efficiently, and with a better experience. So it's now my pleasure to hand it over to Serge, with whom we've worked closely throughout this project. And he'll be happy to present to you the key features of the app, which is available to all of the employees. Serge.
Thank you, Jeff. And hello, everybody. Basically, just to start off, what we did, we basically brought together 3 technologies, the ones from Jibestream, the ones from Indoors, and the ones from reelyActive, to basically help us develop the employee app that is called Espace 4141, meaning Space 4141, 4141 being our civic address. What we did is we developed an app for our employees who were moving from a building, a 3-floor building where they had been working for many, many years in their assigned offices, and suddenly moving into the Tower of Montreal on 7 floors with no assigned seating. So a lot of needs came out of that move, and we decided to accompany the change with a mobile app. What you see on your screens right now is the landing screen of our app, and at that given date, what you see is the actual 7 floors and the occupancy rate on every floor. So obviously, on August 8th, there weren't very many people at the time where this screenshot was made, and basically there was 0 occupancy on all the floors. However, if 50% of the 5th floor would be occupied, you would see 2 red bars basically giving you a 50% occupancy rate on the 5th floor, and so you would know that if you actually want to go work on the 5th floor, there's 50% of the seats that are available. What you also see on the 2nd floor, which is where our bistro is basically the picture of the thumbnail picture of one of my friends. The application has 3 main functionalities. They are obviously occupancy, giving you the occupancy of the occupancy rate of floors, the location, and the location of your friends. I'd like to go back to the previous slide, if you don't mind, just explaining that when you become friends on the application, you share your location all the time, and therefore the little thumbnail you see on the 2nd floor is basically one of my friends who's at the coffee shop. So I know that if I want to see him, I could actually just go right up there and meet with him. So we can move on to the next slide now. And what we're looking at is basically one of the floor maps on the app. And right now that floor map is on the 2nd floor. The blue dot you see is basically my position, and the thumbnail right next to it is my friend who's actually on that floor and who I'm actually next to. And basically it enables me to, like I said, geolocation was the 2nd main need that was being filled by the app, and it enables me to locate myself, my friends. As you can see, there are 3 tabs on top. I kind of play with them, but the first one, which is my network, is basically is going to enable me to see my friends and my colleagues on the actual map. The services tab is going to enable me to see all the services that are available on the floor. I like to stay on the previous screen. And finally, the occupation is going to give me occupancy data on that floor, and wherever I'm going to see a red patch, I'm going to know that it's a busy workspace, so I won't be going in. Next feature that we can, on the next slide, that we can see is a secondary feature, but it's actually being used a lot, so we decided to present it. Is basically we call it the maintenance request. You walk into a meeting room, you're looking forward to making a presentation on a screen, but the actual cable is torn. So basically, with the app, all you need to do is take a picture of the torn cable, write a comment. The projector's cable is broken in this room, and you just press send. This sends an email to the actual maintenance department, and they actually get not only the information that you just gathered, but a map with the location of the room and the actual picture, your comments, so they can just pick up their tools and come in and repair it. That basically saves them a trip from the past, whereas they would get an email telling them there's a problem with the projector cable in this given room. They would have to go see what the problem is and then go get their stuff to get it fixed. So this is an actually interesting feature that is getting a lot of hits on our app as we speak. Finally, for most of our, in the building right now, we have 1,200 employees working. Out of 2/3 of the 1,200, so 800 are call center agents. They live a very, how can I say, regimented work life. They have to be on the phone at a given time. They have to get off the phone at a given time. They have very set breaks and a lunch period of 30 minutes that they cannot go over. So given their reality, for them to be able to order their lunches earlier and choose the time at which they're going to pick it up changes their life. They used to have to go down a couple of floors, line up to get served, line up to pay. All that would take 7 minutes out of their 30-minute break. Suddenly, with the app, we remove those 7 minutes because during the morning, they can choose whatever they want to eat. They set the time at which they want to pick it up. 10 minutes before that time, the ticket will actually print at the bistro. Their meal will be served and put under this little place where it's kept warm. And as they get to the cafeteria, they don't have to wait in line for anything. They just pick up their meal and go sit and eat. So saving 7 minutes out of 30 for I'd say about 800 to 900 employees in this building has been a big winner for this app.
Well, that definitely sounds like a culinary experience there. And thanks for that overview of the app and functionality. Let's talk a little bit about, I'm going to turn it over to Bern to talk a little bit about the journey of how you got here.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes. So, Serge, I mean, speaking about this whole digitalization process, how did you actually get started? I mean, this is a really big project. This is a really big transformation for you guys. How does someone start this?
Well, it initially started with, I'm going to put two things in parallel. It starts with the need of space. Obviously, we're the department at Desjardins that responds to client requests. So for the past 17 years, our department has kept growing and growing and growing. So we had a need for space. In parallel to that, we had started discussions internally about a digital transformation, and we started many projects to start that digital transformation, but they were all, how can I say, unsuccessful because the word transformation created a lot of fear. We were getting comments like, listen, you know, our business is doing well, we're making a lot of money, why do we need to change? Why do we need to transform ourselves? I mean, we also had, on our end, we had data that was telling we're losing a bit of membership. We're also unable to attract talent coming out of the universities. The millennials, they're coming out of the universities and they're looking for another type of business model than one of a bank. For them, a bank is an old business model. It's unattractive. So for all these reasons, we created these projects, and we were sadly unable to get them through. But when the need of space came about, and we said, how about we stop talking about transformation and use the move to actually kickstart it? And that's how we actually started at Bird.
Speaking about the move, or speaking about the start of the project, where did your research begin, or how are there some examples that, I don't know, influenced you during your time of thinking and designing what's going to be now this awesome product?
Well, we had heard about another credit union in Paris called Société Générale, and we were put in contact with them, and we actually traveled to Paris to see what they were doing. Basically, they were moving 5,500 employees from the extreme east of Paris to the extreme west of Paris. You're talking about 5,500 employees that were really unhappy about that move. Even if they were moving from very old buildings to brand new state-of-the-art connected buildings. So change management was one of their big challenges. However, during that visit of their connected environment and so on, we noticed that they had developed an app. And basically, the main features of the app were all automation features. You would walk into a meeting room, and the meeting room had a sensor that would recognize that Serge had entered the room, and it had captured Serge's preferences in terms of lighting, in terms of temperature, in terms of the blinds along the windows and so on, and it would place them to Serge's preferences. So we found that really interesting, and we said, hey, why don't we start talking about developing an app for our employees when we get back? And that's how we got inspired. So we come back and we decide to go through this consultation, and basically this is how we brought our move and the digital transformation together. We created this project called Chameleon, and ultimately what Chameleon was a consultation effort of our employees. So we consulted with them on what the ideal workspace would be for them, what an app should have, what business needs an app should respond to if it was going to be of any value to them. And we were very surprised that automation was of zero interest for our employees. And at the end of the day, what was interesting to them was geolocation, because we're moving from a place where everybody has their assigned seat, and suddenly we're moving into a 7 floors of free seating. So geolocation was one of the main needs. Occupancy, where do I go sit? If my friends are on the 7th floor, is there space next to them? So finding out if there's place for me to work on the 7th floor as well. And finally, the food services, that, like I said, was a big winner for the call center agents we have in this building.
So from knowing what you wanted to do to getting the suppliers, how did that look like? I mean, how did you find all those companies?
Well, we needed, at the time, we only said geolocation. We didn't know what the implications of geolocation meant. Same thing with occupancy. So we started our research, and we realized that we needed to match a few technologies. The ground rule was that as a Canadian organization, and we're a bank, but at the same time we're a cooperative, so we have to reinvest into the community. We needed to find local vendors. So we went through this whole research of we were looking for Canadian startups that have the 3 technologies we're looking for. We were able to find everything that regarded the how can I say, the sensors, the sensor technology with reelyActive. We were able to find the digital maps with Jibestream, but we were not able to find a blue dot, how can I say, vendor in Canada, and that's how we ran into Indoors, and we realized that Indoors was not in Canada, but was actually one of the players we wanted to work with. So we basically got all these people on a bunch of phone calls. We discussed how the 3 technologies could actually work together, and we then one day invited everybody over. So Indoors, Jibestream, reelyActive, and our integrator, Desjardins. We brought everyone in, and they each brought their technology. We had a bunch of meetings on the first day, and then in the middle of that afternoon, we basically let everyone. We actually left the room and told them, listen, we need a proof of concept. We need to know that your technologies can actually work together. So they had brought a whole bunch of hardware with them and everything, and you guys basically proved to us that that the reelyActive sensor can actually capture my XYZ coordinates, and that it could transfer them to Indoors for Indoors to identify a blue dot on a very specific map that was developed by Jibestream. So once we were done with that proof of concept, we also knew that okay, we can make these 3 technologies. Where Desjardins was convinced they could make these 3 technologies work together to respond to Desjardins' business needs.
I can remember those 24 hours of vendor evaluation quite clearly. It was a really fun time. Speaking about initiatives, and was this really driven on your end from IT or from business?
It was driven by the business side, and it was a bit of a struggle. I'll explain. In any how can I say, once you get into in a service enterprise like ours, there's always the fight between IT and the business side about who's leading the business. When you're in the manufacturing world, it's a fight between sales and marketing and engineering. There's always this fight. We basically didn't put up that fight. We just decided to, okay, we're a business unit. We have the right to move forward with projects that respond to our business needs. So we basically built our business case. And how we built our business case, we basically did not build it on the employee experience that we were really going to enhance, but on the square footage. We're getting a true occupancy level in our building, and with the price of square footage in Montreal, it was a really big winner. That's how we got the money. And once we had the money, we basically built our project based on what the employee experience was requesting, and that's how we moved forward on it.
Can you walk us through that journey? I mean, internally at Desjardins, how you got started?
Can you repeat the question, Bernd?
Sure, sorry. I was just wondering, so as you said, you got in the funding and everyone said, okay, let's go. Can you walk us through the journey internally at Desjardins and how you got then started?
Okay, so basically it was a 4-month effort before we could actually start development. We had our ideas, like I said, we came home from France with automation as what our app was going to be. But like I said, Chameleon was a project where we were a consulting effort, if you want, where we were consulting our employees on what the workspace should look like and what the app should respond to. So we had 3 objectives that we needed to achieve. We want a connected workspace. We want our employees to collaborate a lot more than they're collaborating today. And at the same time, and finally for the third objective, was to kickstart the digital transformation. So we had this full consultation. We left from a list of the first exercise yielded 55 needs that the app should respond to. We went through a whole bunch of exercises to bring it down to 23, and then to the 12 that today's actual app is responding to. So we went through that consultation. We basically worked very closely with our integrator, Logian. We started Sprint Zero, and basically Sprint Zero lasted about 4 weeks. And once we were done with Sprint Zero, we had basically prioritized all the features we were going to develop throughout the time and the budget we were given. And we started on, I believe it was June 5th, 2017 is when we started development.
It's been an amazing journey. Speaking a little bit maybe about the tower itself, Jeff, I mean, the tower is basically concrete and glass, and obviously aesthetics are really crucial. Well, the designer they wouldn't accept any visual technologies. Jeff, this turned out to work really well for our corporation. Could you maybe explain more?
Sure, Ben. So actually, after everything was installed, we ran into one of the people responsible for design in the tower. We were talking about putting up beacons or other things, how that could work, and we got an emphatic, there is no way that you are going to deface my beautiful tower or space with any of your technology. So it actually worked out really well. The reelyActive devices, the actual infrastructure, is all installed above the false ceiling. And the great thing working with indoo.rs is we realized that these can serve double duty as iBeacons for their indoor positioning SDK. So actually the aesthetics requirement made us learn that we could do away with battery powered beacons and still deliver a great indoor positioning system and real-time location with a single infrastructure. So yeah, I think it's going back to Chris now.
Yeah, and Serge, thanks so much for taking us through that journey. I really have to commend you on how thoughtful the process was. I think it's something that a lot of organizations, sort of set out to do, but executing on that and following those focus groups, and I guess having, sort of the objective view all the way through that, even though you started with something that you thought was where you're going to end up, you were able to make those changes along the way. So that is just an incredible, way to approach it in terms of getting the best outcome. And we've heard you talk about, kickstarting the enterprise, digital transformation, connected workplace collaboration, and even things like that are non-digital, but moving garbage cans to central areas so people collaborate more. I think was a great part of the story along the way with what we've done digitally. But tell us a little bit about the true success metrics. How did you know this was going to be a success at the end, and what were some of your really base level goals that you wanted to achieve at certain milestones?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we had all these great ideas. We needed to basically make sure that what we were going to deliver was actually going to have success. We did 2 things. Chameleon was the first thing. We're all a bunch of people. We're sitting in a room and we have these great ideas, but we don't know that they're great if 1,200 people don't believe in them as well. So Chameleon, as like I said, the consultation effort where we basically consulted our employees on everything was extremely important. The second thing was the lab, and And by lab, what we mean is in our old building, which was a 3-floor building, we sent everyone home on a Wednesday night and asked them to work from home on Thursday and Friday of a given week. During that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we basically transformed that whole first floor into what a floor would look like here in the tower. So we completely brought down dividers, changed the lighting, brought in all types of new furniture. We had on that floor, we had 6 or 7 different types of individual workspaces. We had 4 different types of meeting rooms. We had open collaboration areas. We had these, these treadmills where you actually have a work table on top. So if you're walking slowly and you're actually responding to your email at the same time. We basically created this lab where we gave a voice to our employees. They tested everything. The chairs that we have in our building now were voted on by our employees. The 3 types of different individual workspaces were voted on by our employees. Basically, the gist of what I'm trying to say is that we were able to give them a voice, and we were able to basically make them feel as part of this whole big project. It's not 6 people running the project, it was 1,200 people who were involved. And with technology, we were able to actually involve them. With the lab, they were able to actually participate in important decisions. And with that lab, we were also able to actually test the features of our app, because we wired that floor and it became our test ground. For our integrator, Logion, this was an actual big winner, because it's easy to actually code something thinking it's going to work, but having a place where you can actually test it before we send it into production was a great success factor for this app. So we actually put the reelyActive sensors, started playing with our features, saw weaknesses, worked on them, developed other features, and it's basically once we were when we finished development, the lab was still live, so we were able to test every single feature we developed, and all that was left to do was to do the final testing once we moved into the tower.
Yeah, that's super important. Can't say enough about sort of testing things like that. And 2 questions here: how are you getting people to use the app, and how many people are using the app out of the workforce today?
Okay, right now in the tower you have 1,176 employees who have 4141 Pierre de Coubertin as their workplace address. At any given time during the day, you'll have at peak you'll have somewhere around I would say 750, 760 at peak. At one time in the building, we actually have around 38 to 40% adherence rate at this stage. What we were really surprised, obviously, the food services, the culinary experience, as we said, is a big winner. For call center employees to actually save, let's say 6 out of 7 minutes that they would waste waiting in line is actually huge for them. So it makes for a better work life. So they're happier, and by being happier, they're happier on the phone, and they're happier with our clients at the end of the day. From a professional standpoint, the geolocation feature is also a big winner. You're talking about people who, you're talking about 400 people out of the 1,200 that support the call center operations. They're professionals. A lot of them have been here for more than 15 years, used to having their closed office with their pictures of their children and so on, that's all personalized. Suddenly they're working in an open space with a bunch of people, and finding where their friends and colleagues are was huge for them, and has actually created a lot of, fun in the workplace.
Yeah, I bet. And that's, 40% engagement, now is very solid, for sure. I think what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Jeff, and maybe we can talk a little bit about how we're going to maintain that engagement and increase it perhaps through what's coming in the future.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, now it's time to look into the future. So as we've mentioned earlier in the webinar, one of the advantages of working with technology platforms is the ability to adapt and evolve over time. So we've already seen this, as you can recall, Serge, regarding occupancy, where we learned once all the employees came into the building that it's a very different environment from when we're doing our testing on an empty building. So Serge asked us to improve granularity in a few key areas. And making such improvements is straightforward and routine. We're already advancing the project, even though it's been just a few months now since it's been live. So Serge, it's great what's been accomplished to date, but knowing you, I'm sure this project will continue to evolve. So how are you going to take the learnings and the insights to shape the future? Maybe you can share your vision for future use cases.
Absolutely. I mean, as Chris just mentioned, a 38 to 40% adherence rate after we've been live for, I believe, 8 weeks now is actually great. But it is great. However, from this point on, it can only drop if you're not feeding the app. And by feeding the app, I mean developing new features. It's like, I mean, most of the people on this webinar today are probably, Facebook or Instagram users. But if Facebook or Instagram weren't giving us new features 2-3 times a year, we would stop using these platforms. The only reason why we keep using them is because they keep innovating and bringing new stuff to us. So that's the attitude with which we're addressing the future of Espace 4141, our app. And basically, looking into the future, we have 3 needs that you actually see on your screen right now that we want to work on within the next 10 months. Wayfinding being one, meeting room reservations, and third-party integrations. And I'll give you a few use case scenarios so that you can actually understand what we mean by that. Right now, when I'm inviting a guest from outside for a meeting at the tower, I send him an invitation, via Outlook. Then when he makes it to the building, security will call me and tell me your guest has arrived. Please come and get him. So I have to take the elevator, go down 6 floors, and go get him at security. However, the way we see it in the future is my guest would actually download the app, and I would send him the invitation through the app, and I would send him the meeting invitation, and with the meeting invitation, he would get a QR code, and he would arrive at the building. Instead of going to security, he would go to the gate and put the QR code in front of the reader that would open the gates with him, that would launch the app at the map page, and it would basically, using wayfinding, tell him what he needs to do now to get to the room where I'm waiting for him. So basically, he would see, well, you're now on the 1st floor, and you have a meeting with Serge. Serge is currently on the 2nd floor in this room, so you need to walk to the elevator, take this elevator. As soon as he would come out of the elevator, the path would be traced for him so that he knows exactly where to walk to get to the meeting room. So I would never have to go down to security to pick up a guest. The guest would make his way on his own to the meeting room without getting lost. So that's a use case that we're actually very excited on working on. And the other one is the third-party integration, where, as I was explaining, I take a picture of a broken item in a meeting room. I write a comment, and it's sent by email to the maintenance department. They actually today have to retranscribe it into and open a ticket in their system. I actually want to integrate our app and their ticket opening system so that they don't have to do anything. You would basically remove one part of the how can I say, managing needs, because all you would have is basically people who are looking at their screen and getting in the request, you need to go to this place and fix this, and it would remove one more step for them.
That's great. Thanks, Serge. And actually, I find this interesting how you mentioned Facebook and Instagram. Can you just mention briefly, are the new features coming more from Desjardins than the team, or is it coming more organically up from the employees?
They're actually the invitation for the external people is coming from the employees, which is great. It requires wayfinding if we're going to create a real amazing experience for our guests. So, those are the two features we're prioritizing. And third-party integrations, obviously, coming from the employees, because right now their first step is this really, data entry type of function that they don't really like.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so I think that can take us now into the key takeaways. So on this webinar, we've talked about many different things. And Serge, obviously, you've learned a lot since the project began, as did all of the different companies involved. But from your perspective, can you share your key takeaways and learnings with the members of the audience who probably find themselves in a situation that's similar to the one you found yourself in about a year ago?
Well, I mean, basically, it's three things. One of the key success factors for us is that we were able to consult and involve our people. Like I said, using Chameleon, the project, as basically this consultation platform where we gave a voice to our employees, the actual lab where they could voice their opinion on anything from a chair to an actual projector screen in a meeting room. We basically gave a voice to our employees, and so that's why I say consult and involve your people. All of that enabled us to create ownership and excitement. People felt that that this big move into the Tower of Montreal, into this iconic building of the city, was their project. It wasn't the project of the 6 people working on them. It was me and 5 of my colleagues. We worked on these projects for 2 years, but it wasn't just us. For them, they were part of the players in the whole process. So as I say, create ownership and excitement. Everybody was extremely excited to finally make it here. Obviously it was a construction project. There was delays, but on our first move at the start of August, you could feel the excitement. And the consequence of these two key takeaways is that when people walked into the building, you felt that you obviously felt the excitement and how amazed they were about what it looked like, but you also felt that they knew exactly where they were going, like if they had already been there, even if it was their first time there, because they owned the project. Finally, change management is key, and you obviously need a communication plan that's tailored to your target audience. That's the most important, how can I say, takeaway from this third one, in the sense that, we have about 900 people on the phone here. Most of them are millennials. So we originally, when we were talking about how are we going to communicate on a regular basis with our employees, we were basically saying we're going to create these, nice emails that they're going to be able to follow what we're doing and so on. Okay. Millennials don't read emails. They just don't. As hard as you'll try, they're using social media. They're not using emails. So what we decided to do is to create this TV series that we filmed, and we actually last week had our final episode, which is after the move, and it was the last episode. And basically we had 13 episodes, and those 13 episodes each had a theme, and we were basically announcing to them how the construction was going, how the development of the app was moving forward, and then they started seeing the chairs that they actually selected, and we had this whole scenario built, and it was a TV show that they followed for about 13 months, because it was one episode every month, and the 13th one was actually last month for the first one and only one after the move.
Well, excellent. And again, that's just such an amazing process, Serge, and keeping everyone in the loop is I think the real success there in terms of getting the adoption and everything else. So hopefully everybody has been inspired today by what you heard from Serge. Probably a lot of you are in the same position as where he was 13 months ago, just getting started. What we'd like to offer you is a free discovery workshop. The best place to really get going on a project is defining your requirements and helping get alignment across your organization. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we see from the outside looking in, is that there are many different teams with many different needs, all of which are usually relying on some of the same foundational sort of technology, but then have different use cases. So it's helpful for us. We've gone through this process many times of bringing everyone together, flushing out what are the most pressing requirements. It's a walk, crawl, run approach here, and then phasing it out into logical milestones with success criteria. So we'd love to have you join us for that, and we can help you really get going on this.
Great. Thank you, Chris, Baron, Jeff, and Serge. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We really look forward to working with you in the future. So the first question we had to do with privacy. So, Serge, this is for you. A lot of people are concerned about the perception that they're being tracked. How did your team address this? Was this a consideration when you were adding the friend locator or other features into the application?
So it's actually a great question. We had those concerns internally, and during Chameleon, in the actual focus groups, we dedicated one focus group to that. We needed to understand what people's fears were, and after those workshops, we basically set ground rules about where we were going to locate people and how we were going to locate people. So obviously, in certain areas such as the washrooms, there are no real receivers there. You're not going to be, your position is not going to be measured there. So we'll see you in your closest location, which was maybe in the hallway that leads to a washroom, but we won't know that you're in the washroom. Another thing that we did is create the whole concept of friend versus colleague. When you're a friend, I know you, I've accepted to become your friend, and therefore I accept to share my location with you all the time. However, if I only need your location for work purposes, we don't need to become friends. I ask you to share your location with me, and when you accept, your location is shared for the next 30 minutes, and then it expires. So that's how we were able to go around this hurdle.
Great. Okay, another question for Serge. Is there anything you wish you knew before you began the project that would have prepared you better? Android
updates give you real headaches. That's what we worked so hard on developing these features and everything. Apple, iOS, and Android have different ways of managing their companies and with their strengths and weaknesses. But when you're not aware that the actual new version of the OS is actually going to have an important impact on your actual app, it's actually a bit frustrating. So preparing better for the iOS updates, the OS updates, sorry.
Great. Someone was asking a question about, do you have to be on the app in order for it to be counted in the occupancy numbers? Jeff, if you want to talk to that a little bit.
Sure, I can go ahead with that. So the interesting thing with what Desjardins has installed throughout the tower is it's really a Bluetooth, low energy, real-time location system. What that means is it's listening for all the Bluetooth signals coming off of devices throughout the building. And the smartphones and devices like, let's say, a Tile key tracker or a Fitbit, a lot of these will actually emit Bluetooth signals, and the Desjardins infrastructure picks that up. So for occupancy, you do not need to have the app installed. You'll actually pick up a lot of the people. It's not possible to do perfect counts. Serge can maybe talk a little bit more to what levels of accuracy that they're getting. But it gives you a good enough count, and especially a relative count floor by floor of how many people are in the space.
Yes. Go ahead, Jody.
No, Serge, please. Everyone's here to listen to hear from you.
Yeah, basically we're talking about occupancy, and you know it's a big part of our business model. We're basically getting right now our accuracy level is probably around 80%. So we're able to say with 80% certainty that our occupancy level is at around 60%. It's huge for us in the sense that in our previous building we had one workspace per employee. In the move into the tower, we decided that we're actually going to have 0.85 workspaces per employee. Why? Because we figured that we have a lot of mobile employees. We have employees that are at their desks and in meetings at the same time. You have employees working from home sometimes. So we're probably gaining 15% occupancy. The reality is that we're gaining more like 40%. So as I said earlier in this webinar, the people handing us the money for this project, they're not necessarily excited by employee experience. They're bankers, and you know they want to give me $1 and they want me to give them back $1.50, and this is how I make it happen. I basically tell them I have 8 floors on this building and I actually need 6, so I have 2 free floors. So given the fact that of the high price of a square foot in the city of Montreal, I can now bring 2 other departments into this building and save a lot of money to the actual enterprise. And that's how I get them to give me more money to develop more features for my app.
That's great. So Chris, this is a question for you. While it's about Desjardins, the question is, how can Desjardins keep the location and floor plans up to date if a floor layout changes?
Thank you. So the main thing is that we're always looking, you know, to not just Desjardins, but any clients, is that if there's any central database that we can connect with, either we will become the source of truth or sync up with the source of truth. So our maps are all broken into objects and layers, which have external IDs associated with them. They can communicate through a REST API with any central system. They will, when there's a change made, that'll be pushed out to ours. So many people have, you know, different systems that range, and some of them, sometimes they just manage it through ours. If it is going to be done manually, there's a content management system that you can simply add a location, drag and drop it onto the map, and we can also make structural changes, you know, things like splits and merges to the map as well. And in this vein of wanting to keep a, you know, sort of synced up source of truth, the platform now also exports things like CAD files. So if you want to give them back to facilities managers or emergency system, whoever needs really the maps in any format, they can easily take them out of the system.
Great, thanks, Chris. And then someone had a question, Jeff, to the section when you were talking about how battery-powered beacons were not being used. They just missed that part. If you wouldn't mind reiterating what it was actually used in the project.
For sure. So in this project, we're using wired, actually daisy-chained sensors. So they're powered and connected to the network at all times. And these sensors listen for Bluetooth, and they also act as beacons. So the way you can think of it is, as rather than putting battery-powered beacons in all strategic locations, instead you've got these long daisy chains, these reels of beacons that are continuously powered and continuously monitored. So you don't have any of the problems associated with beacons that, you know, they fall off and go into a garbage bin, or that the batteries run out. I hope that answers the question well.
Great. Again, thank you so much, Chris, Baron, Jeff, and especially Serge for taking the time to join us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.